Hello everyone, I'm Alia Al-Senussi, and I am so pleased to be here with you today, from Basel actually, for this special event celebrating a unique collaboration between Burning Man Project and Sotheby's. Sotheby's and Burning Man Project have come together to host a charitable sale, Boundless Space, the Possibilities of Burning Man. This sale showcases 180 artists from around the world who are inspired by Burning Man culture. It includes sculptures, paintings, collectibles, mutant vehicles, NFTs, and one-of-a-kind experiences that emerge from the Burning Man event and global culture. During the annual Burning Man event, well, I suppose before what's happened in the last 18 months of our lives, the C word, I won't say, tens of thousands of people gather in Nevada's Black Rock Desert to create Black Rock City, a temporary city dedicated to community, art, self-expression, and self-reliance. Today we will explore how Burning Man has evolved from a community of artists, misfits, and makers to a global cultural movement. What it takes to create a city featuring hundreds of awe-inspiring artworks in the Black Rock Desert. Ways that this auction breaks with common practice by featuring artists who are less established and have never been sold on the secondary market before. As well as, of course, the importance of inviting works by members of the Black, Indigenous, and persons of color communities and artists. I am so excited to be here with these three speakers and, in fact, really thinking about how, my own experience really, after having said all of these wonderful things about Burning Man, I'm almost a notorious non-burner, but that's all going to change soon. That'll change next year when we're together. And really have come to understand the values of Burning Man, and having had so many good friends and friends from my own personal life, but friends from the art world who have explained to me this kind of incredible community that has come together for these around these 10 principles. So these 10 principles, as you can see on your screen here, are really about this idea of organically evolving from the Burning Man gathering. And I think what we'll hear, and actually how we'll kick it off, is I'd love to know about that evolution and how those 10 principles have evolved and, in fact, have come to embody really everything that I hold dear in the world. This idea of community, this idea of radical inclusivity, this idea of coming together around culture, around artists, celebrating artists, supporting artists, and allowing those artists to create their most radical vision. So over the next hour, we'll be hearing from our three brilliant guests, who you saw briefly, for what I'm sure is going to be a fascinating conversation. Joining us from California, from the fabulous Golden State, we have Kim Cook, Burning Man's Director of Creative Initiatives. Kim works in the frontier of exploration for projects and collaborations such as this one that extend Burning Man culture into the world. She has developed the Boundless Space collaboration with Sotheby's. And I really can't think of a more perfect collaboration across the world than me sitting here in Basel, at Art Basel, the first kind of major art world gathering since, let's say December, February of 2020, and being here with the art world and then talking to Kim in California about Burning Man. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Alia.
You too. And in Harlem, New York, we have Fab Five Freddy, who, along with his friends and contemporaries, including Keith Haring and Jean-Michel Basquiat, Fab was a key player in New York's 1980s downtown cultural scene, a time I really wish I could have been and lived with you, Fab, but sadly slightly too young at that moment to be with you. So Fab has been directing music videos for numerous hip-hop stars like Snoop Doggy Dogg, California hometown boy, and continues to make visual art and produce and direct projects for film and television. Fab is an artist, a filmmaker, a burner, so one thing I'm desperately trying to be next, and a Burning Man board member, and is leading the auction committee for Boundless Space together with Kim. Welcome, Fab.
Yes, thank you. Nice to be here. Hey, what's up, everybody?
What's up? And then joining us from New York, we have Harrison Tenzer, Sotheby's head of digital strategy, who has been closely involved in bringing the Burning Man auction and exhibition to life. Thank you so much for joining us, Harrison, and all of our panelists.
Thanks, Alia. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I just want to kick it off by asking a few things about Burning Man, since I am the neophyte and you are the burners who are going to tell me all about it. So tell me, what does Burning Man mean to you in 5 words? Kim?
My 5 words are learning by doing, participation, and creativity.
Fab?
Oh boy, let's see here. I'd say inclusive, dynamic, radical, fun, and very creative.
There we go. And Harrison?
I have never been to Burning Man and now must go. So my words are mysterious, because it seems like this incredible mystery to me, fun, exuberant, creative, and radically free.
So you and I need to go pop our cherries, I suppose.
Absolutely.
So let's take a step back, and you and I can see what Burning Man is all about, and Kim and Fab can relive and revel in their most fabulous moments. Fab, when was your first time to Burning Man, and what makes it so unique to you? It's not just a party in the desert, and as we clearly know, you are a board member, which is a very serious thing to be. So tell us, just tell us about that journey.
Well, it was interesting. I mean, like a lot of people, I didn't really know what was really going on. I would see a few seconds of, hey, the man's burning out in the desert on CNN. I'd be like, I didn't know what's going on out there. But until very close friends went and came back with amazing stories of fun, of amazement. And I was like, I can't believe what I'm hearing. And so then in 2010, I got my first opportunity to attend, drop down in all that dust with tens of thousands of people. And it was an amazing, just open, just exciting time that reminded me of times back in the 80s on the downtown scene in New York, when my little group of crazy creative friends just did whatever we want in a really kind of interesting creative space. And that all went away. And Burning Man has figured out a way to make that happen way out far from anywhere, and then have created a unique kind of very, very, very special world that I then got. Because for me, at the core, it was the creativity, and without seeing any brands or any like sponsored by or brought to you by this one or that one or the other one. And then I dialed in and was like, okay, I got it now. This is all about creative expression, the arts, and all those great things, that the 10 principles, which are the guardrails that keep this thing going. Like, I've seen scenes and been integral in scenes that have influenced, like, creativity around the world, but then they got co-opted and they're all gone. And there's an amazing thing about Burning Man, and they figured out a way to keep that going.
Well, so tell me about the artist community there, because I think that's really at the core of how Burning Man, and actually, as I said, here at Art Basel, it really does feel like community right now. It doesn't feel like, oh, galleries selling works. It feels like there's a community of people coming together, and that is the art world, and that is, what you're trying to explain about having gone there and seen that. So what is it about the artist community at Burning Man that you were able to experience and then also live through the year?
Yeah. Yes, what I want to say is one of those principles, decommodification, takes out all the high finance that has besieged the art world. And that's not a bad thing. Artists need to live, pay the rent, keep the lights on and stuff like that. But at Burning Man, all of that goes away. So you're making art, or you're bringing your work, you're figuring out a way to bring whatever it is, whether it's gigantic sculpture or whatever, way out into a desert, and then set it up and then let people come and enjoy without them having to pay a fee, and just all those things that we're so used to. So all that goes away, and so you're creating from a purer space. Radical expression, if you will, is exactly what you kind of get a sense of. There's something very unique and very special going on, and it just fulfills things.
Do you and the other makers and the other artists, do you interact while you're setting up there? I mean, that's always kind of a fun time when there's like the build out, I suppose, of something.
So do
Yes,
you think
well, the
that
community.
I can jump in a bit?
Yes, yes, please, Kim, please jump in.
You know, I'm so inspired by this conversation. I had to kind of stick my toe in because
Please.
what is coming up for me is that it's not a solo act. You know, like the Burning Man experience a bit demystifies and untangles this idea of the sort of mythic solo artist that's just inspired and you get something glorious. It's like it's not really possible to go to the desert with your vision and not do that in some sort of collective manner. And so even an artist who has a very specific vision for their work will have a collective of people supporting them. And also, people who do not consider themselves artists will be inspired and be able to bring something because there's just this kind of open playing field. So one of the unique elements for any artist, and I've asked many artists why they bring their work to the desert, is this co-creative space that, as Fab was just describing, is non-competitive. You're on an equal playing field. If you forgot something, somebody else brought it. They're going to share it with you. People share resources, knowledge, volunteers, food, and it's just a simultaneous, like concurrent 453 artists and their collective community building all at the same time for this kind of transcendent result.
Incredible. So I think for Fab, we have a short personal video clip from you from your 2018 visit to Burning Man, so just shortly before the world changed. Let's see it, and we can see what you're talking about.
Right. Well, this was a piece that Hank Willis Thomas, African-American artist, had made, a giant Afro pick, and I was a part of the team. There I go. Music by Fela Kuti was playing, DJ'd by DJ Rich Medina. I had arrived that day on the RoboHeart art car sound system, and it was just an amazing event that kicked off that 2018 burn. That's Danny, a good friend of mine who came out there, and her sister Tony, both Harlem residents, and it was just an amazing time. And that's just a short glimmer of the fun that happens in the dust.
Right, but I think also what's so interesting about that, all the names that you just said are names that I recognize. You know, of course, like Hank Willis Thomas being, such a seminal figure, especially, in the context of the art world, but also what's been happening in the United States. Fela Kuti, a giant of music. So it's not just about just the unknown. It's about really democratizing the entire experience. So Kim, maybe can we talk a little bit about that? So what role does art play at Burning Man, but what does it take to create art for Black Rock City? And at the same time, it's really about a very large group of artists, artists who maybe have never created something like that before, and then other artists who are just really excited to be there and have done it many times. I mean, Hank Willis Thomas is, a kind of a seminal figure already in the art world and has created incredible installations around the world and around the country.
When Hank submitted a grant proposal to bring his work to the desert, I was so happy and so excited because it gave us the opportunity to make a very clear statement by way of supporting his work, how committed we are to inclusivity and to send a welcoming signal that's so vivid. And we made some very specific choices about the location of the work. And I do think you see more and more that artists who are already established are interested in being in the desert, even as you see people who, for example, work at IDEO and are not planning to make careers as artists, but who come together in a small collective and make incredible pieces. So you use the word democratizing. I think there is something very personal in terms of you have to have a strong motivation to bring work to the desert. And this kind of way in which people show up, they could be architects, they could be artists, they could be engineers, they could be first-time makers of something that they had a grand vision for. and you're going to get a full entire range of contributions. In the end, when I ask artists, like, why do you do it? Because, they break their banks, they often, have relationship breakups, they spend months preparing to come to the desert. In the end, what I hear is that the lack of white walls, the lack of gatekeepers, the open landscape, and the opportunity to work together within a larger community is what's driving them. I never hear someone say they come to Burning Man to advance their career, but we also see artists like Leo Villarreal, who famously, made blinky lights so he could find his way back to his camp. And you see this image on the right is the work that's going to be in the auction lot, but the image in the middle is, he's just done these bridges lighting the Thames. So he's clearly a profound and well-regarded international public artist. So people know about these trajectories, and Leo serves on our board. I wouldn't say it motivates people, but I would say that you really do have from the unknown to the acclaimed. And I think that shows up in the catalog in our project with Sotheby's.
So on that subject, I think that's a really interesting thing to say, is that this is an opportunity for people to take home a work from the desert. This is really a way to reinterpret and reimagine what they might be seeing or what they might have seen, this past year, and unfortunately weren't able to, but what they might see in the future. And these artists have interpreted that based on their own experiences with you and in the community. So on that note, the Sotheby's and Burning Man, it was an unexpected partnership and auction, I understand, and it came about in a really, I think, fun and fabulous way. Fab, you played a crucial role in bringing Sotheby's and Burning Man together. Tell us a little bit more about how that idea was born.
Yeah, so, I've been a long-time visual artist, but also been integrally involved in the creation of hip-hop culture. And so Burning Man Sotheby's, Burning Man, it's all coming together. Sotheby's did a hip-hop auction a year ago with all types of objects and items and cultural mementos and pieces of hip-hop culture at Sotheby's, and I took part in that, and some visual art and an object or two. And I went to Sotheby's in the thickest of the pandemic just to take a peek, masked up, of course, and I slid up into Sotheby's to see the installation. And the CEO had come down to meet me, heard I was there, and we were chatting, and he heard that I was a burner. And I said, yes, well, it was canceled for 2020 as well as 2021. But I said, as a new board member, the focus is fundraising. And so, by the way, maybe we can do something together. And he right away lit up. He said he wanted to go to Burning Man. And so I right away said, man, this is a great, this could be interesting. I connected him with the CEO, Mariam Goodell, and we began to talk. And then Kim came in, and here we go.
Well, I think that's so fascinating because it's also about bringing together so many different parts of a conversation. So it's about having experienced something in real life, being able to translate that back to, a very different context, within an auction house and boardrooms. But at the same time, I remember you telling us in the other conversation we had was about seeing that incredible show, the Contact High show, which I had the wonderful privilege of seeing in Los Angeles and then traveled to Abu Dhabi. And so this experience of being able to see art in different contexts and to experience what music or photography and art can really bring together. So maybe kind of also tell us a little bit about that, because for yourself, you're an artist, a filmmaker, involved in the music world in so many ways. So how can we think about somebody being a hybrid? And I think that's Burning Man also.
Yeah, that's totally Burning Man. And I knew right away, that these were two different worlds, if you will. The art that is made on the playa at Black Rock City and Burning Man that we were just talking about, That's a different world than the world of Sotheby's. But when the CEO indicated his interest, I knew right away that if this was going to happen, it was going to happen in a unique Burning Man kind of way. Once again, inspired and guided by the 10 principles. And so we came together and have created, if you will, a hybrid of the auction idea. Nothing like this has ever happened. So it was a very specific intent on looking out for the artists, knowing that these artists were going to get a platform that many of which, once again, have never been a part of the secondary market. So a lot of people are going to get a chance to see objects made by the burning community, as well as artists that are close to that from a very broad, wide, and diverse scope, which is a part of what the organization and as a board member, we've been focusing on in this downtime of the pandemic. How do we make it better? And so this is an example of that, which has come together in a unique and special way. I'm so proud and so excited.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know we're all about digital, Harrison, and we're going to ask you about that right now, but I really wish I could have seen this in real life. So, but tell us a little bit about how, I mean, Burning Man being something that maybe historically has been outside the traditional art world, but is moving more into this kind of hybrid or, let's say, balanced place where it is about, you know, the non-traditional art world, but welcoming in so many people from that art world, from the world of business. And let's say Sotheby's as being also a platform and an auction house, but has also been so supportive of nonprofit projects and, you know, and charitable, you know, institutions for so many years. You know, I myself have done so many kind of wonderful things with Sotheby's to support those institutions. So how does this idea of working between a cultural institution such as Burning Man and bringing together those two value systems with you and with this digital initiative, particularly in this moment and in this really peculiar year, you know, how did that happen and what makes this so interesting? And really, why can we ask all this audience to support this?
Absolutely. So I think what's so interesting about working at a place like Sotheby's is while we as a company have a very strong brand, you know, we are selling amazing cultural objects that we haven't produced. We are a platform. We are a space where folks can come and learn about incredible objects, whether they're watches, jewelry, art, sculpture, etc. So what's amazing about partnering with any institution, whether it's a museum or Burning Man, we're open to learning and trying to facilitate as much as possible, bringing the message from that institution to the broadest possible audience. So I love that everything we do is really a collaboration. And what's been so rewarding about working with Kim, especially, we are talking every day, and she's taught me a lot about not only the Burning Man community and all these incredible principles, but has introduced me to many of these artists who are going to be sold early next month. And what I think is quite interesting about this opportunity is we have artists, over 200 artists from all nations of the world. It's one of the most diverse sales Sotheby's has ever had in terms of where these artists are coming from, gender, race, background. It's really fantastic. Here you see a few snapshots of just a few of the artists who are involved. And I think what's also very exciting is not only do these artists hail from many different backgrounds and parts of the world, but there's so many different media that's being used. As you mentioned in your intro, Alia, we have painting, sculpture, NFTs, unique experiences, couture, jewelry, painting, sculpture. So it really represents just a huge cross-section of what's happening in the contemporary art world. And Sotheby's often only focuses on a relatively small percentage of the artwork that is out there. Artwork that has often been by artists who have come to the auction block before. We're able to look at what those secondary or public markets are. And what's really fascinating about this sale is over 90% of the artists included have never been to auction before. So this is a really incredible moment to create a platform to showcase all these incredible talents from around the world and introduce them to the Sotheby's collecting network. And my goal with this sale, and my hope would be that beyond this one sale, what this will be is a flashpoint and a community building exercise where many Sotheby's clients can learn about each of these artists. If you already go onto our website now, many of the artworks are already posted, and there are artist statements and links with more media and information about each of these artists. So my hope is that some of our collectors will start to reach out directly to these artists, creating those relationships, and that this sale will really be an introduction and a way to help to build a market for many of these artists who already have gallery support and a great network of collectors, but really deserve to be showcased more fully and internationally. So I'm very excited about what the sale can do.
Incredibly. One of my favorite sayings is a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think the idea of collaborations in particular is that you see it's not just about this one moment. Of course, we want this moment to be incredibly successful in this sale to shatter records and really bring in a lot for Burning Man and for the Burning Man community. But what we also want is for people to, as you just said, to learn about those artists and to really learn about what Burning Man means. And to somebody like me, for perhaps, who has come into this through friends and through my own dedication to community and to radical inclusivity, realizing that my values are very much aligned with those of Burning Man and with the artists that Burning Man is supporting. So I think that a collaboration and a platform like Sotheby's is bringing that to a much larger community. And it also means much more in the lifespan of something than just the, kind of the few days of the auction or of the online initiatives. Kim, I think that's really just the perfect segue to you and to this idea of what brought you to this, and then also what does this partnership, collaboration, and what does this moment for your artists and your community mean to be involved with this or to be leading on this?
Thank you, Alia. It's funny, the behind the scenes is messy, and when ask
is
for
behind the scenes not messy? It's not worth it if it's not messy.
It's like totally. And when you asked for the 5 words and I said learning by doing, my first 3 words were that short phrase, because I think Burning Man is never afraid to plunge over the edge and find out what's on the other side. And, whether the women in particular, founders, Crimson Rose, Harley K. Dubois, and Marion Goodell, who are all closely involved in the day-to-day, took this on knowing that it really was a social experiment of sorts. And we also took it on in the exact moment that Burning Man was accelerating and prioritizing and publicizing its commitment to fostering even more specifically what radical inclusion, diversity, and equity meant. So we knew that there's no way you go out dancing in public with Sotheby's and pretend not to address those issues. It means you have to step right into the center and be available for transparent, thoughtful dialogue and conversation. And Fab and I built an auction committee that was diverse, and then we built a circle of nominators and connectors that were even more diverse, and we began to source art from directly within the Burning Man community and far beyond. And that allowed us to revisit these 10 principles. They're not edicts. We're not proselytizing. We're not recruiting. In fact, we can't even, supply the interest in terms of tickets for the people who want to come. So what we're actually doing with the 10 principles is thinking about how one lives and embodies a value system. And so a lot of the artists that are in this auction may never actually attend Burning Man, but they live lives of communal effort or participation or gifting or civic involvement or leaving no trace in their sort of close connection to the planet as Indigenous people in Mexico. And so the auction and the partnership with Sotheby's gave us a chance to examine how we live our values, who our extended community includes, and how we could have a transparent conversation about what was on offer. And so while this is a charitable auction to support Burning Man, each of the artists has the option of retaining 55% of the proceeds of their artwork in the sale. Each of the artists has been invited to flesh out a catalog page with more information, as Harrison said, allowing the catalog to have the porosity that someone could go there, find an artist, find out more, and connect with them directly. We've tried to create this really expansive, dynamic, bold collection that I think we all feel really proud of, even as we understand that it is incumbent upon us to take responsibility to do everything we can to make sure that these artists do well in the sale. Sort of never mind Burning Man in a way, right? Because once they have been in at auction, there's been a sort of establishing of value, if you will, in the marketplace. And I want to make sure that the community that's listening to this and the community largely across, our communication strategy understands that this is a moment when you can lean in and say that your value system aligns with ours, and that the priority in terms of when you bid on an artwork is actually you're saying, I support artists and I support aesthetics for their intrinsic value, regardless of whether I know, what the future investment return will be. My investment is one of the heart, and this work is speaking to me, and this artist is speaking to me, and I'm bidding because I want to support that from that place of motivation. So it's a supercharged, really dynamic, wild ride of a collaboration, which I am so grateful to have Harrison as a partner, because we've been learning together. And Fab, Fab is
I would like to add as well. I'm sorry for jumping on Kim. I would like to add that all the artists get a ticket to Burning Man. A lot of them have never attended, so that's kind of in the gifting tradition, that principle. The artists will hopefully get to come.
Do I get a ticket?
Oh yeah, I have a friends and family ticket with your name on it for sure.
There
I
you
can't
go.
wait.
That's
I'll
what's
think of an appropriate gift to gift you back. How about that?
We definitely want to see the princess on the playa. Can we make it happen?
Ooh, princess on the playa. I love that.
Okay.
But so really tell us about the artists that you're very excited in the auction. I think that you have, as you said, you and Fab have done such an amazing job of kind of reaching out to a really wide community of artists who you know personally, who have been to Burning Man, but who also just embody the values that you believe in.
So, I have to tell you, I'm excited about them all. I was assigning lot numbers a couple weeks ago or last week, and I just there's no way to favor some over another. But we do have a few images to share that are sort of examples of, first, you have classic burners like David Best, who is the, father of the temple, and this rocket car is on offer. You have Shrine, who is using upcycled, recycled materials. You never believe that image is full of bottle caps and other things from the trash. Rebecca Throne, who leads our ticketing department, takes this beautiful sort of clutch bag that she makes from wristbands from the event. So, these are really deep in the community. And then you move into artists like Paula Delphine, who's in Mexico, has not been to Burning Man, and is, breaking new ground around her relationship to the feminine and how she's addressing that. And Yasmin Dabous, who's in Lebanon, and Yasmin, she makes these kinship necklaces where she collects beads and tassels and fabrics all across the Middle Eastern and Arab communities and cultures. And then each one of those, she tells you how old it is, where it came from, what its cultural significance is, how it's worn. And, she's put 2 necklaces into the auction, and the catalog notes will suggest that you keep one and give the other. And this one is called Survivor because it survived the blast in Beirut just last year. We also have other artists who make things out of materiality, sort of interesting forms. Betsabe Romero from Mexico is making this beautiful object that's from a VW tire and rim. And Maurice Cavness, who is in fact a burner, has hand carved this extraordinary sculpture that's called Icarus as a Black Man in America. And we just love this piece and plan to showcase it in an exhibit during events at Sotheby's between October 2nd and 7th. We're delighted to have Mario Moore, a rising star out of Detroit. I don't think you can get his work really. I think there's a long waiting list, but he was kind enough to offer us this extraordinary work into the auction. And other well-known artists such as Shepard Fairey have also contributed to this auction. And you know, one of the things we said to the well-known artists is like, your light is going to amplify the visibility of all of these other artists that people may not ever have known about if it weren't for you bringing enough interest to the auction that helps us share about others. And then of course our beloved Hank Willis Thomas, who is championing such important things through his work with the Wide Awakes, is actually a person who makes art for Burning Man and has gifted us this work. We've also moved into sort of looking at NFTs, non-fungible tokens. We have 14 altogether. Fuckrender out of Quebec has offered us a new piece that he made for us. Alexa Mead, who you see here, does these incredible sort of body painting and takes 3D objects and turns them into 2D images and videotapes them. And this one is a small animation based on her work in collaboration with Rainbow Shift. And, you know, I mean, she's sort of the opposite of Trompe l'oeil. I mean, her work is astonishing. And then finally, we have Dominic Tignou, also known as DA. He's our head of Playa Restoration, doing this self-portrait he's calling Swan Song, which is going to be a phygital, if you've heard that term, a sort of physical object combined with an NFT. And the imagery here is he has to go every year after everybody's left, and people take everything with them when they leave the desert, but that doesn't mean they successfully got all the things. So he does a line sweep with you know, hundreds of volunteers for several months and collects every last thing, even down to tweezers. So what you see in the foreground of this image is what we call matter out of place, MOOP. And he's created, you know, because he's also an artist, this kind of sense of like he's holding back the force of this MOOP, and the sword over his shoulder is his trash picker upper with the desert in the background. So he is one of a few artists that have never made an NFT, are not known, and who we've supported to mint their first NFTs, which will be on auction. So not only is his offering a one of one, it's the first one, and probably not the last that he's created. And there are other artists like that. So this is like just a whet your appetite, because there is a lot to discover and be delighted in with artists. As Harrison said, we have 22 countries represented in this collection. It's really, really unbelievably magical what has shown up, and I'm going to be forever grateful for having had this opportunity.
Well, it's also wonderful in light of the news that came out just recently that, you know, the travel restrictions are lifted for, you know, kind of people to be able to come and visit. So hopefully you'll be able to have all of the kind of wonderful vaccinated international community come to Burning Man now. And I think, yes, especially
and also come to New York, because yes, you know, the auction is live online from September 30th to October 8th, but the exhibit that we have, which will have a large representation of the works on sale at Sotheby's between October 2nd and 7th, and the 2nd is the Saturday. We're doing our thing, right? Like, we've put the call out to the community, so you can circulate. Sotheby's has been great. They hired David Corns, the brilliant set designer, to help collaborate so that we could create an environment, right? It's not artworks on the wall that you stare at. It's an environment. It's an immersive experience, and there will be sort of sound healing and yoga and gallery talks and an opportunity to experience culturally how we relate to art in this very interesting context between October 2nd and 7th at the New York Sotheby's Gallery. So I'm really hoping that people will, join the vibe, if you will, while we're there next month.
So everyone, you heard that. Please join the vibe. We need you there. And Harrison, I understand that 90% of the artists in the sale have never been sold on the secondary market before, which I think seems unprecedented for an auction house and unprecedented for a sale also of this size. How have you and your team worked with these artists to bring them together and to bring them to auction?
Absolutely. It is definitely unprecedented. And what's been so interesting about this experience is it's really taught me to examine the idea of value. Because so often, when I started as a specialist, the way we learned about conferring financial or monetary value onto artwork was by looking at data on, let's say, Andy Warhol. You have a work on paper, you're able to see that many other works on paper have sold, and then you can easily get to an estimate. It's sort of like the real estate market, looking at comps. And what was so freeing and also challenging about this was that information wasn't really publicly available to us. So a lot of it came down to working directly with Kim and many of the artists to understand how they value their own art, whether it's based on the cost of material and times. As you guys have seen, the craftsmanship in so many of these works has blown me away. That, I think, has been the thing that continually excites and invigorates me, is just this sheer sense of craft. And also working with some of the galleries who represent some of the artists. And it's been difficult sometimes to come to an estimate that we feel really values the work and treats it as an object of value, an artwork of value, but at the same time is exciting and engaging and accessible enough for a client who has not yet heard of this artist to bid. And I think, as a side note, one unfortunate aspect of the art world is people usually see with their ears, as we say. There's a huge demand for artists who already have a very major following. Many of us know about this idea of art as investment. You want to get an artwork before that artist really takes off, becomes well known. Your artwork will gain more value. And what I've really enjoyed about this sale is, in many ways, we've put a lot of those concerns over here out of sight, and it's really about engaging directly with the artists. And as Kim, Fab, and the entire community has put together such a beautiful array of different artists, it's been about making sure that each of these values speak to one another. And hopefully, when you're scrolling through the sale, it's democratized enough so that individuals who want to own a piece of Burning Man can find something that suits their budget. And it's been an education, and it will stay with me as I look forward. And I hope that it's also a great message to the broader secondary market that it's time to look farther afield. There are many art worlds. There's not just one. And there's many incredible makers out there. And they might not be at the brand name gallery, or they might not have gotten the right MFA at the right institution. But this is not 19th century France. We should not be so tethered to specific brand names, a specific academia, and we should be more free. So this has been a really great invitation to do so. And as Kim said, we invite all of our clients to come and support these incredible artists.
The multiple art worlds is so important. And this idea of really being able to bring them together and have that conversation with each other, because there's so much those artists can learn from each other, the collectors can learn from each other, and being in that room. And I think you've picked out a few works that you would like to introduce us to, so I'd love to see and hear about that, especially from your perspective.
May I just
Kim,
say quickly, Harrison, before you refer to some artworks, is that you also talked about that more and more people want to collect the story behind the work, that this is a shift in approach that has to do with connecting and having a touch point, a sense of cultural meaning in the work. And I would say also, I'd be surprised if half of this catalog, if they even have gallery representation. So I thought it would be cool if you could say again what you've said to me about this piece around culture.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me about that. It's always important to note, Sotheby's, we are and historically have been quite an ivory tower, and I think that's slowly changing. But, if you come to one of our auctions, you see a $30 million Basquiat on the wall, and it's a little bit divorced from the days when he was hanging out with his dear friend Fab Five, and the community downtown in East Village, just a 25-minute drive from where we are in York Avenue. And when you think about all these incredible blockbuster paintings that we sell at Sotheby's, they all come from a network of individuals, artists who are hanging out, partying together, sleeping together, drinking together, philosophizing together. And more, as Kim was saying, there's an interest in really getting behind the scenes. And so, as Fab was also mentioning, we had a hip-hop sale last year. And what was so fantastic about that is it showed, we had love letters that Tupac Shakur wrote to his high school sweetheart, an incredible crown that Biggie wore, and an amazing shoot that really came to encapsulate his vibe and his vision for a while. And people are so excited about this material, the behind-the-scenes ephemera, the notes, the exchanges between artists, makers, designers that create these cultural movements that they're very excited about. And this sale really brings all of that together, because you do have couture, jewelry, art, etc., that all encapsulates these 10 principles of Burning Man. And they're all shown together, and those dialogues are made clear. And in many ways, that is what our goal would be for many artists. When we think about the Basquiats and the Herrings of the world and the 80s scene, or you think about the 1950s Abex artists, having them together and explaining those stories and making that very clear is very important and I think really exciting.
The idea of storytelling in the arts, and I think in institutions, is incredibly powerful. Just like you said, seeing artists in the context of each other, of their communities, of what they mean. So I think you've chosen a few works to tell us a little bit about here.
The Karen Christians, I think, is really interesting because it's a lab-grown diamond from the dust of Burning Man. And I think what's so interesting about this is you can see it as just a beautiful piece of jewelry, but once you understand how it was created and the story behind it, in many ways it becomes this sort of spiritual talisman, this real story of spiritual rebirth on the playa, which I think is really beautiful and just so simply and elegantly created. You have some really incredible couture by Iris van Herpen, and these are really wearable sculptures. And from what Kim and Fab have been talking about, this idea of when you're on the playa, you're really able to radically express yourself. So I feel that these two works, the works by Iris van Herpen, are sort of an incredible way of enhancing your own image. And then there's an incredible work by Big Chief Damon Melancon, which is hand beaded. These are all glass beads that you can see here. He's based in New Orleans and comes from a tradition of African mask making, and himself is a cultural and spiritual leader. And I just think that this incredible piece titled Ethiopia just really conflates time. It feels like an ancient tapestry, and yet the message is so clear and vital to our time in thinking about re-engaging with our history and understanding really the weight of that history and the work that's yet to be done. And then you have this incredible sculpture by Leora Kaplan, an Israeli artist. And she, again, in a big way for me, conflates time. I mean, this to me could be some type of ancient scepter or something from the future, some type of alien race. So I love that it's just this totem that really is embedded with this power. And many of the works really have this quality of being totems and being conductors for higher frequencies of energy. So again, you guys should all come, be part of the vibe, and really scope out the energy that these artworks are giving off.
Well, we're conducting higher frequencies here from Well, I guess we have two of you in New York, me here in Basel, Kim in California, but we also have the honor of Fab, you really being an artist in this context. Yes, of course, Burning Man board member, but you have a work in the auction, and there's no better way to experience nor hear about a work than from the artist himself. So please tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I was excited to share this piece. It's a series of work that I did that kind of, the background is a referential nod to a train that I spray painted back in the 80s, which was a homage to Andy Warhol. So there's a collage background of that, and then a sort of a graffiti Rorschach test in the foreground, which is my process is sort of inspired by the way hip hop music has been created. The sampling, sort of like collage elements, but this sampling of various elements of other graffiti pieces that form that Rorschach, but also in a remix kind of context. So using some of the things that have become, how hip hop music is made, sampling, remixing, cutting is the process by which I come up with this particular work. So this is Major Movement, a piece I did close to 10 years ago now that I'm happy to have in this auction.
Well, it's so incredibly exciting. Again, I wish I could see it in real life, but I know many of you will be able to go see it at the exhibition. And I think really on that note, to just wrap it up, to think, what does this all mean in the context of true collaboration? So Fab and Kim, maybe just start us a little bit on how this has come to embody the 10 principles of Burning Man and your own experiences leading these creative initiatives, Kim, and Fab as a board member and burner and artist, and how you see this moment being really important, just briefly for the audience.
Well, I could just say I'm just so happy that this organically, I like using that word because so much of my life in this creative space has been organic. And the way that I just happened to stop to see a auction, this hip hop auction, meet the Sotheby CEO, and leading to this amazing kind of unique opportunity to showcase so many artists and to do it in this unique Burning Man way. It's just so special to me. And, that's basically what is exciting, moving, and very motivating, if you will, that Sotheby's wanted to do something really different in working with us in this unique way. It's very special.
Mm-hmm. And Kim?
Well, the legend, the lore in Burning Man is that people started to ask how they could have the same experience or similar of Black Rock City in their home context. So the 10 principles were not written as an edict, they were written as an observation. So Larry Harvey, the original founder of Burning Man, who then came to do the work with 5 other co-founders, in a sort of reflecting on the behavior of the community. What happens when you give people the open space, the expansion, the permission, and a little bit of structure that makes them feel safe inside of that container? What happens? And what are the behaviors? And there's a kind of optimism in the 10 principles about the human spirit, and what we do when left to our own devices is these things we now are referring to in code, if you will, as the 10 principles. And I think, I've led Burning Man partnerships with Smithsonian, Public Art Project with Google, and Art Trail in Nevada, and so forth. And each time you come up against the cultural norms, restrictions, limits, and possibilities of your partner. And with this moment at Sotheby's, I think that what will be transformative is how the collection is so rich and full and representative of a big, wide world of talent and incredible artists. And I also think that some of the dismantling of the notions of value and the reevaluating of the choices that we make larger art community and the many art worlds that Harrison and you all you have referred to, the lasting thing may be the questions that come out of this as much as the opportunities that come out of it, in terms of how do we continue to advance a world in which we value the contributions of artists, and we make possible the coming together as community in ways that are meaningful and rich. And if we manage that through this collaboration, then that will be amazing.
Thank you. And Harrison, to conclude with you, because we really want to make sure that this audience is fully engaged with the Sotheby's platform that you have built for this incredible movement. Tell us about how this sale is kind of perceived within the context of the Sotheby's universe, and how people can engage and support, and what happens next.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that, Alia. All of you now, your homework assignment is to go to www.sotheby's.com. You can easily just type in Burning Man in your search functionality, or go to our calendar and see our upcoming sales. To make it easier, you can even just select New York as the location. You can go to our website right now. As Kim has mentioned earlier, there's many lots that are already on our website. They're not yet open for bidding, but you can learn about the pieces. You'll see the estimates. You'll see all the information on the artworks, and many of the sale pages have information on the artists in general. You can be kept up to date by selecting track on the sale or follow, and you'll be able to get updates once the sale is live. And the sale will be open for bidding for over a week. And if you leave a bid and are outbid, you will receive an email telling you that you have been outbid and inviting you to bid again. So I encourage you all to keep up on the sale as we add more and more lots. And then once we're live, the bidding can begin.
Well, I love that. And I love the idea that so many people from around the world can be a part of this, because really, I think that, as you had said and as Sotheby's has communicated, this is about positioning what has happened at Burning Man alongside other sales which embrace the aesthetics of a cultural movement and a time in history. And as Fab said, being involved with the hip hop auction, really understanding the context of couture and streetwear, photography even, which we now think of as really as an artistic medium, but for so long was not perceived as such. So Burning Man as being a cultural movement, as being a place of radical inclusivity, is now, fully open to the world, and there for everybody to take home a little part of that, and a part of those 10 principles, which Kim said, not an edict, they are an observation. So I want to thank Kim Cook, Fab Five Freddy, and Harrison Tenzer for their brilliant contribution to today's event, and to Sotheby's and Intelligence Squared for putting it all together, because I know I desperately needed it, being here in Art Basel, and all of your amazing help, and seeing all of you, and really being a part of this community of radical inclusivity, and feeling a part of the wider art world, and yes, the Princess and the Playa. So please, I hope you all have an opportunity to see some of the exhibition in person, opening at Sotheby's Space in New York on Saturday, the 2nd of October. And then the online bidding, as Harrison mentioned, for the charitable auction, Boundless Space, The Possibilities of Burning Man, which opens on September the 30th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time.